This is not coffee. This is hot chocolate. Mm, really good. So this is how the story affects how you treat your partner, how you treat your wife, your soulmate, right? And why you keep on having constant arguments with your partner as a burned out overachiever. So, the story, right? What is this story? Also, before that, look, I have a mosasaurus in the back. I got that like 2 days ago, and it's insane. Like my favorite dinosaur is mosasaurus. It's crazy how huge this is. Man, look at the size, right? It's crazy. Anyway, I'm a big fan of Jurassic World. If you don't already know. Story. What is the story, right? You are a burnout overachiever. You've achieved a lot of great things in your life. Let's say good grades if you're in academics, right? If you are still pursuing academics, or perhaps in your work, in your business, online business, real physical business, whatever it is in your life, or you're probably an athlete as well. You know, whatever achievements that you've achieved in your life, you've overachieved that, you're conscious of it, you're conscious that you've overachieved that in your life, but then you're also burned out. Why? Because you're here today and you know that yourself, you have problems in your past relationships, just like myself. I used to be a overachiever, but a burnout person as well. I've got through and went through a lot of different relationships in life, especially with the feminine, right? Not only with the feminine, but also with friends, you know, social communities, and other different relationships, especially with my parents as well, right? A lot of these relationships, it has been damaging to me, and it has been damaging to them as well, especially with the feminine. And if that's you, and you've achieved a lot of things, you've improved yourself. You know, I've went through years and decade, well, let's say a decade or a bit less than a decade of improving, of personal development, but just it can't seem to work when it comes to the relationship part, right? The relationship part, even though we follow, you know, red pill, black pill, blue pill, whatever pill that we follow, right, nowadays, however we romanticize those relationships or love, we never got to the point where we are satisfied, and we never got to the point that we are at the point where we want to be, right? We keep on sabotaging our relationships. And now that I tell you this, you might be unconscious, or you might be conscious that you are actually sabotaging your relationship, right? Because I do. I've gone through many relationships, right? Therefore, I have a lot of exes in the past, right? If we say it in a more modern term, exes. I went through this relationship, a lot of these, but then none of those work out. Let's just put a bullet point into there, right? None of those work out. That's it. Case closed. And perhaps the reason for this is because I'm burnt out. I'm an overachiever, right? I try my best to achieve things in life that is sort of not correlated to relationships, but then I put whatever values I have in my work or career life into the relationship, because I'm trying to maximize whatever qualities from the feminine that I can get. And so in this video, I'm going to show you what is the story that I'm talking about. If you can see the video from the title, how this specific story is actually ruining your whole relationship life as a burned out overachiever. Now, the story, this is not any different. Like, I'm not gonna say anything unique here. This is not a story from a novel or anything, right? This story is actually your old story. Think about it for a sec, right? What is your old story? Your old story is your past, right? Think about a decade ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. I'm still like 18, basically adult. I can say 10 years ago, but I cannot say 20 years ago, right? You've probably been living for 20 years, or perhaps you can say 15 because now you're conscious of yourself when you're 5 years old. Think about your old story, right? When your parents are there, you have interaction with your parents, of course, right? You communicate with your parents. Now, a lot of this time, your old story affects your, well, I can say present or now. Let's just say present, right? Or perhaps your ongoing story. So your old story affects your ongoing story. It affects who you are today. Because just think about it. I mean, logically, right? Did you hear my sister coughing? If you do, I'm sorry about that. But she's still sleeping. But yeah, whatever ongoing story you have today, it will be affected by who you were or what you listened to or what you did in the past. Right? If you think about it, I mean, logically, whenever you do something in the past will affect who you are in the future. If you jump off a cliff in the past, in the future, it will be affected because now you have the ability to overcome the fear of jumping off a cliff, right? Of course, it will affect both in a positive and negative way. But if you're here, that I know the story affected you or influenced you in a more negative way, right? So your old story affects your ongoing story. Your ongoing story is where you are today, your present. Me moving my hand, this is my ongoing story, right? This is me moving 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fingers. This is my story. So when I look back, oh, I moved 5 fingers. You get what I mean, right? This is the ongoing story. Now I forgot where is my notebook, because I have my notes there of what I'm gonna talk about in this video, right? So basically, your old story, it's filled with this old beliefs, if you get what that means, right? So old story is built on, because we're talking about psychologically, right? It's built on beliefs, behavior, and what's the other one? Beliefs, behavior, and mostly beliefs and behavior, right? This is like the two top main thing, because whatever belief you have will affect your behavior, right? Whatever your behavior is will be affected by your beliefs, right? So this is very, very important, because how your parents wire that belief system in you will affect the behavior that you have today, right? That's what I'm talking about, old story, because who you were, let's say your identity, right? Who you were back then, your old story, is affected by your parents. If we draw like a mind map here, right? This is obvious. Whenever your parents does the way they do, you will follow them when you were a child. Just like think about it, and probably a lot of people already talk about like how your parents affected you, how your mom does this, your dad does this, or perhaps your siblings or anyone that is more older and quote unquote more mature than you affect how you live today, right? Perhaps your mom cleans up her bedroom, or your mom cleans up her bedroom in a unique way, and perhaps you realize to yourself that you do the same thing as her, right? And I realized that myself as well, how like my mom cleans up her bed in a very specific way, the bolster and the pillow in like a very specific position, and I end up following the same. Why? Because the term is mirroring, right? Let's say if I draw a mirror here, I cannot draw a mirror, right? Let's say this is a mirror. Just think about this is a mirror, right? And then this is you. Oh my god. It's my TV going. Why is it on? Right? Think about it first. Let's say this is you, and this is the mirror, right? What do you think the mirror will do? If there's light, it will reflect your own appearance. Think about that analogy for a sec. That's the exact same thing, like how your parents are reflecting your identity through them. Because first, of course, your old self back then is immature and raw and virgin, right? We're not talking about like sex or anything, right? But you're still immature, you're still raw, you're still a virgin. Like your beliefs, it depends on your parents' beliefs, on how they reflect back the behavior that they see through you. And so when that happens, let's say if you I mean, this can be both in a positive and negative way as well. So now you get the analogy first, right? Think about it for a sec. The mirror is your parents. And here, this is you. This is your parents. Whatever your parents do, however your parents behave, whatever your parents say, especially, listen to the belief system, is automatically reflected to your own identity. Let's give an example, right? Your parent says, you are handsome, let's say. That's the most basic thing ever. You are handsome. Of course, the child will think to itself, like, let's say a decade ago, let's say 10 years ago, then I would be 8 years old, right? However years old you would be, whatever your age is. If your mom or your dad says, you are handsome, the child will think that he's actually handsome, right? Because that correlates back to the identity, right? When it correlates back to the identity, he will embrace that. He will hold that identity until today. But if it goes to the negative way, what will happen? What will happen if your parents called you a pig? Or what will happen if your parents calls you a what is it? The worst part is if the parents is, if you live in a dysfunctional family. I've talked to a friend before whom his parents called him a faggot. right? Now, I'm just gonna say words here because I want to be unfiltered as much as I can. So, one thing is a faggot, right? Just hearing that word it's very deep. Think about what would happen if the child, think about a raw, immature, fragile looking child is called a faggot. What do you think will happen? The child, again, will think that he is a faggot. The child will think that he is a pig. Again, it's all about, where can I write? Identity. Right? If your identity is affected by your parents, then whatever behavior or beliefs that come out of the identity is going to be locked inside your brain, locked inside your heart, and you will bring it all the way to your adulthood. So, going from there, we can conclude that a lot of these behaviors and belief system and all those stuff, it comes out and it's affected your inner child. So if you know my YouTube channel, I talk a lot about the inner child, right? And that inner child is basically how everything just makes sense, right? How your beliefs and your belief system, the behaviors, is all coming up from the inner child. Especially when you're a burned out overachiever. That's also a trait. No, that's also how the inner child expresses himself. When something in his childhood is affected, a lot of things can happen. I'm going to be talking about in this video. I hear a simple song. Let me know what time is it now in your place, bro. I feel pretty curious, like where my audience come from. So let me know down in the comments below. Where do you live and what time is it for you now? All right. The inner child, right? I'm gonna make sure if I'm still recording or not, because I'm using my camera. But I'm gonna check the time for a sec. I'll be back. It's almost 9 in here. So yeah. All right. So the inner child, right? What is this inner child? The inner child is this subconscious mind within you. Subconscious mind that is affected by trauma, by past. I'm just gonna write it down. Subconscious mind that is affected by trauma, past events, and old shaming beliefs. All right. It's the subconscious mind that is affected by trauma, past events, and old shaming beliefs. Let's just rewrite this as the wounded inner child, because the inner child it can be positive or negative, right? But if it's wounded, That means the subconscious mind, the inner child within you, is affected by trauma, like the bad negative events, and old shaming beliefs. Now, trauma can be, if you think of trauma, right, it can be like a huge thing, or abuse, physical, sexual assault, right? It can be anything of that. But a trauma can be that, but it can also be subtle, how do we say it? Subtle slash repetitive, small action. I can say RSA or SRSA, whatever you want to say it. But basically, a trauma can be this big thing, or it can be like small but repetitive, right? Because think about it, a trauma can be the physical abuse or sexual abuse, but the other one, if you don't already know, it can be lack of dependency needs, right? It can be that your parents has like strict rules that neglects the ability for you to play. Or perhaps your mom is a perfectionist, and every time she does something, she makes sure that a lot of these things are neat and tidy, and there is no flaws at all. So like flawless, right? When it's repeated, that can be a trauma as well. So don't ever think to yourself that you are not wounded, because every man in this world, and woman as well, they carry a wound. And that wound can either come from the big one or the subtle one. So now that you understand, let's. I want you here to actually visualize this, because the inner child is something for us to visualize, so we can get to fixing how you can reduce the amount of arguments, or perhaps you have a mature argument and a more mature relationship with the feminine and with your social life, with your parents, and you're not going to be constantly sabotaging your life with it, right? So I want you to visualize the inner child in yourself as well. Now, if you picture an adult, right? Let's say this is an adult. A lot of today, I didn't. A lot of in today's world, a lot of adults are adult child. Why? Because again, every single person in this world is an adult child, and they're all carrying some kind of a wound, right? Because a lot of like generations through generations, right? Generational pattern, generational cycle, right? Your parents might also be inheriting whatever behavior traits or personality that they got from their parents as well, which is our grandparents, great grandfathers, and great grandfathers, right? It all comes from the ancestor. And so everyone in this world, as myself, yourself, your parents, everyone is an adult child. Why? Because again, you're wounded. And so if you want to visualize this, this is adult, this is you, an adult, you're happy, but that's just a mask. Why? Because the actual happiness is not there within you, within your soul, because the child is still there, alive, but he's sad. He's crying because you're putting a mask, right? You're not acknowledging him at all. Like, what are you doing? You're walking through relationships over relationships, and that's why you're sabotaging yourself, because little do you know, the child here, right, is still controlling how you live, is still there operating your whole body system, your whole soul, your whole heart. And you're just there, just doing nothing about it. That's why you're here, right? This is the reason. He or she, he is the reason that your relationship is being sabotaged all the time. He is the reason that you feel disconnected, or you feel disassociated with your own feelings and your own emotions. That's why whenever you are in an argument, or whenever you are in a conflict with a person, you keep on lashing out. You keep on putting out this immature behavior that you are, I hope you're conscious of it now. I hope you're conscious that you keep on overreacting, you keep on paying attention to small details that causes you to overreact. You have this like temper tantrums, right? A lot of this stuff is caused by the wounded inner child. Okay? Now, how does this whole wounded inner child work? Basically, your brain, it has the, what kind of brain is this? Excuse my drawing. This is your brain. It has what is called the prefrontal cortex. Right? Your prefrontal cortex is the brain where you use to decide, to think, to emotionally regulate your emotions, right? And when that prefrontal cortex is disassociated with your own brain, with your soul, that's linking back to the inner wounded child, right? This whole nervous system, if you think about, prefrontal cortex, brain, it all covers up within a nervous system, right? When your nervous system is operated by this guy, by the wounded inner child, just think about it, right? The inner child will respond to people, will give feedback, will do whatever behavior that he does in a more immature way, immature behavior. So when the nervous system is operated by the wounded inner child, he will express immature behavior, and one of which is overreacting, is temper tantrums, is being very clingy to someone, and that's someone avoidant, anxious attachment. I'm going to be talking all about that in another video because I cannot put everything in this video, it takes a long time. But again, yeah, your nervous system is affected by this guy. How does it work? Every time you're going through, let's say you're in a relationship and you are in an argument, if your inner child is wounded and your inner child does not like conflict because he is scared what will happen if he is in danger, then your wounded inner child will create what we call the shield, or what we call the defense mechanism, right? Defense mechanism will create the defense mechanism to defend himself from the attack that we get from our partner, because he think that conflict is danger. And in order to fix that thinking of the inner child, we have to fix our prefrontal cortex, or we have to fix our nervous system, right? So our defense mechanism will be integrated to ourselves. Because when we are disassociated, meaning that our adult body is separated or is disconnected from the wounded inner child. And when we're disconnected, we don't have any interaction or communication with the wounded inner child. And one of the few corrective work that we can do is actually to have inner dialogue with the wounded inner child itself, right? That's why in a lot of the arguments, you constantly want to defend yourself because you don't want to get into conflict and you don't like conflict, let's say. That's why you bring out this immature behavior to them. I mean, in a lot of different ways. Sometimes it cannot be fixed, sometimes it can be fixed, right? I'm just going to show you some example of the wounded inner child. Doo-doo-doo. So, contamination, right? Contamination. Now, I'm gonna give you just a few mnemonics because from these each of these letters, I have like a mnemonic that correlates to how the wounded inner child contaminate your adult life. And one of which is also, especially in relationships, as a burnout overachiever. I'm just going to give you a few because I'm not going to be talking about it. It's going to be too long in this video. So one thing I can be talking about is codependence, right? And acting out, narcissistic behavior, and trust issues. Codependence. What is codependence? Codependence, from the word itself, is when you depend so much in the other person, in your partner, right? When you have that anxious attachment towards your partner, right? Anxious, also avoidant as well. When you're too needy of that person, or you tend to don't want to be engulfed, or you don't want to be enmeshed by the love that the person wants to give you, so you become the avoidant one. Codependence can be a lot through you. There is a lot of work that you can go through to fix that codependence, right? And codependence is one of the very huge problem in relationships. One of the huge problem when it comes to relationships, because I remember myself when I was with my first relationship with a ex, right, with one of my girlfriend. I remember that I am too clingy to the person. I have that anxious attachment. If I'm not close with them, then they're gonna leave me. If I'm not constantly giving them love, validation, and surprising them, do all this lovey-dovey stuff, they will leave me. And if I have this dependency, and if I need this dependency from them for them to actually validate me and give me love, then of course that person will go out, they will leave, right? That person will, if that person doesn't understand the whole contamination of the wounded inner child, of course that person is not going to care about that, and the person's going to leave anyway, right? So having this trait, this contamination in your life, codependence, it will constantly sabotage your relationship because you will play around with anxious and avoidant attachments. Acting out. Acting out is sort of it's similar like codependence, but then like acting out is more of if you have what we call the unresolved trauma, right? When we have unresolved trauma, which is physical abuse, sexual assault, your parents keep on yelling at you for no reason, perfectionist behavior, a very performative behavior from your mom, from your dad. When you have unresolved trauma, you will act it out in relationships. If, let's say, your dad keeps on yelling at you, keeps on abusing you, right? Keeps on assaulting you in a way, right? You will grow up, and whenever you're in a relationship, whenever there is some sort of danger happens, or again, like we can link before, if you're in a conflict and you think that that's something that's dangerous, right? Because we don't want our parents to go, but if our parents are yelling at us, or if our parents abuse us, we just have to adapt. We just have to survive. This is all the defense survival mechanism, right? Because as a child, if our parents leave us, what will we do? We're not going to be able to do anything. So we just want to adapt and stick to it. So if your dad yells at you and you just stay silent, that's a defense survival mechanism in order for your dad not to leave you if you scream back or whatever, or maybe you do scream back and you do fight back, but then your father suppressed that. Your father silenced you because you're not allowed to be angry, how your father treated you. Perhaps that's what happened, right? In your infant, toddler, preschool, school age life, and your adult life, from your infant life all the way to the developmental stage of where you are now. Perhaps you have that memory of when your father abused you, and when you want to get angry, he suppressed you. That's an unresolved trauma, something that you haven't yet resolved yet, something that your inner child within you is still confused on what to do in that situation. So now he acted out, again from the word act out, that behavior of, you know, being abused and not being able to speak in your relationship. Just think about whatever unresolved trauma that you have within you right now in your past memories that you have, and think about how that affects who you are today in your day-to-day lives, with your partner, with your parents today. Narcissistic behavior. Now, a lot of time in narcissistic behavior, I cannot say narcissistic, it's all about dependency needs, right? Dependency needs are what? When you're dependent on someone, that means you need their touch, you need their love, you need their verbal affirmations, you need their compliments, you need everything from them. Not only physically take care of you, like shower you or whatever, but also the need to touch, the need of speaking, the need of mirroring someone, right? If you do not have that healthy narcissistic affirmations or belief systems that is put into you when you were a child, then you will go out to a relationship and see your partner as a lost parent. You see your partner as this source of validation and love that you want to get from them. Because every time that you don't get those dependency needs, every time that you don't get very, very unconditional love, let's say that you didn't get from your mother, when you want to find it out in your partner, you will fail. Because your partner can never give you unconditional love that you need, right? And how does that affect you? You will go up there and maximize the qualities that you have from a partner. And your brain will just believe that whatever needs that I can get it from a partner. So I have to maximize the qualities and the green flags of a partner and just forget about all the red flags that a human being must have, right? That's a narcissistic behavior. And last one is trust issues, right? Which is trust issues. Who doesn't know what trust issues is, right? Trust issues is correlated with unpredictability. Right? With unpredictability, meaning that back then, the reason why you have trust issues now is back then your parents has this different intensity of giving intimacy and giving love and giving unconditional love to you. Whenever you are, whenever you're mad and then suddenly your parents doesn't give you love, doesn't treat you right, but then when you're not mad, your parents treat you right? A lot of this confusion about, is my mom gonna love me if I do this? It's all about the if your inner child cannot predict the repeated patterns, the love that your parents will give you, then trust issues will come out. Because you cannot predict whether you're going to get love or whether you're not going to get love. But if you can predict that you're going to get love either way, even if you're angry, even if you're sad, even if you're mad, then trust issues won't be a problem. But even if that memory that perhaps, my parents were predictable, in another way, trust issues can also be a problem in today's life. And that's for you to find out yourself. Perhaps this is just what I'm going to be talking about in this video. I'm going to be talking more about trust issues in another one. And another one that I want to be talking about is spontaneous age regression. right? Spontaneous age regression, from the word itself, is basically spontaneous, sudden. I should have put it in the topic before that, but it's spontaneous, sudden age regression, going back to the lowly developed one, the most underdeveloped part. Regress, going back to the low state of development, right? Which means if we're talking about the subject here, age, that means spontaneous. Every time we're in a point where this behavior comes out, that means we're experiencing spontaneous age regression. Because again, just to add on that, this is just a term you have to remember whenever you act out this behavior, right? You are spontaneously regressing your age. You're going backwards to your age. You're going from where you are now, 25 years old, to back where you were 7 years old, right? Whenever you are experiencing these contamination in your life, you're actually not yourself. You are your wounded inner child, which your age is regressing back to its, low value age, which is, let's say, 7 years old. And spontaneous means it's sudden, right? If I'm not mistaken, is spontaneous sudden? I think it is. If I'm wrong, comment down below. I think spontaneous means sudden. I kind of forgot all of a sudden. But spontaneous age regression. Now you understand now, right? Now, we can fix this. We can fix it. A lot of different ways can be done to fix these contaminations that affects your relationships. Now, being an overachiever is fine, but affecting your relationships because of it isn't fine. So in order for us to actually fix whatever we have to fix, there's a quote from Carl Jung. It goes something like, you have to bring the dark into the light, or else you cannot bring anything unconscious to conscious. So we have to acknowledge, we have to bring the inner child and we have to integrate it to light. One of the things that we can do is to actually reclaim and reparent our wounded inner child, right? And what does this look like? If we reclaim, it looks like, we can call it original pain work, or we can also call it grief work. And reparent, I put it to, I'm going to talk about the 4 P's and corrective work. Now, as a child, in this psychological, way, in order for us to actually fix those contamination in our life and not sabotage our relationships, because of course you want to live happily, get married, fulfilling lives. We first have to reclaim our wounded inner child. We have to integrate whatever woundedness that we have within us to where we are today, to our self right now, in order for us to live authentically, in order for us to live in the truth. And after that, we must reparent, because reparenting, right? You cannot fix this contamination in just a day. When you parent someone, when you have a child, you're not just gonna take care of the child only for a day, right? You're gonna take care of the child forever, for 10 years, for 20 years. Perhaps you will release the child once the child is mature enough to be released, and that's when your care slowly decreases. But you're still taking care of the child, right? So this corrective work and 4 P's is a daily work that you must do. But original grief work is more periodically, is more perhaps once or twice in your life, right? So what is this original grief work, right? Original grief work is basically feeling your feelings. Because back then, your emotions, or the feelings that you have that you express to them, how your parents mirrored back, they silence you, they suppress those feelings, right? Because let's say you're not allowed to have those feelings, or else you will have sin, right? A lot of this stuff is related to you not being able to feel those emotions, feel those feelings, express those behavior, express the anger, the raw power within you, right? And when you're not allowed to express that, what will happen? You will not going to be able to feel your feelings. And when you're not going to be able to feel your feelings, you're going to project that whatever shadow or unconscious emotions within you to other people, even though you are not aware of that. So in order to be aware of it first, you must first do original grief work. And I'm going to be talking about grief work again in another video, because I'm not going to spend too long in this video. But grief work is basically feeling your feelings. A lot of things you can do is by debriefing, right? Which is basically just writing your past story in your notebook, like I have mine right now. And you must then, after you write that, you must then get validation from a very supportive person. And then let that person affirm your story after you debrief. So you know, so your inner child remembers like what story that you've undergo, that you've went through in your old story, like I mentioned in the introduction of this video. Now, after you get validation from a supportive person, this is when you want to feel your feelings. This is when this whole meditation happens, right? And again, I'm not going to be talking about it in this video because it can get too long. Then you must do some sort of meditation to like visualize this whole feeling your feelings thing. And a lot of which you can get from that is actually, you can express anger, you can cry, you can express sadness. This is all about grief work. Grief is basically acknowledging the feelings that you had, that you've gone through, that you didn't know how to express. Now, this is when you express it in your meditation. Because now that you've released those emotions, you have the permission to actually express those emotions in a more mature way, which is also called original pain work. Because whatever original trauma that you had, your feelings were suppressed, and now that you're going through this grief work or this original pain work, now you can release those feelings that were suppressed by your parents during that scene, or during that trauma where you were physically abused, or your parents were perfectionists, or whatever your story is. Now, after that, after you've done this like once or twice, you want to go through the 4 P's, or what we call the corrective work as well, right? The 4 P's are basically potency, permission, protection, and last one, practice. Now, in order for you to do these, you must go through the grief work first. Or the original pain work first. Do I have this in? You must go through the original pain work first. Then you can go through the daily like reparenting, right? Potency, same thing as power. Your inner child must trust yourself, the adult child, that you are able to go against the old shaming beliefs that your parents gave you during childhood, right? If your inner child doesn't trust you, that you have the capability and the power to go against the rules, the behaviors, the old shaming beliefs that you've gone through during your childhood, then your inner child won't ever change, right? That's why you want to go through meditation first, in order for you to reclaim that inner child and bring him to your heart, connecting with him, associating with him. Because beforehand we are disassociated, remember. And then you want to give the permission. Do you let him express. Right? Just forget all about the rules that your parents gave you. Do you let him express those behaviors that your parents didn't let you back then? If you don't, then again, you will keep on projecting those unresolved trauma. You're going to keep on acting out those stuff in your relationships today. Right? Even though you're overachieving, you will still be burned out of those relationships that you are not fulfilled by. And you're going to keep on acting out. So you have to give permission to the child. You have to let him know that it's okay. It's fine. Right? I'm here for you and I'm going to guide you through. I'm going to parent you. I am the real father. I am the mother of you. I'm going to give you unconditional love. Right? And I'm going to permit you, I'm going to give you consent to express your anger that you couldn't express back then. Protection. You always, as a child, must protect, you always, as a parent, must protect the child. If you don't protect the child will die. Right? You have to protect. You have to defend and go against vigilantly. Alright, my phone died, but look, I made the text better, right? Defend and fight vigilantly. Now, what do I mean by this? Right? Defend and fight vigilantly. As a child, you must be protected, right? You must be defended whenever there's danger that is coming to you. And the only one who can defend the child is, of course, the parents, right? And we must become the parent. Can you hear like a child screaming or something? Sorry for that. So, in order for us to protect the child within us, we must defend and fight for him vigilantly, right? We must stay aware of the dangers around us and fight for him if there's anyone that is going through or going into our boundaries, that is going in and touching our sensitive wound, right? If someone is doing that, you must tell the child to mature and protect him from any dangers that other wounded children or adult child are affecting to you. An example would be putting boundaries to yourself, right? Say no when you want to say no. Say yes. Say no. Be decisive about it. You teach your inner child to do that, and you protect anything that will infiltrate or interfere the emotional capacity of this wounded inner child. And if you do that, he will trust you. And then lastly, I wrote it already, practice. This is an ongoing process. Why? Because think about it. When you want to parent a child, when a child is here in this world, right? Suddenly there's a baby, just pop up, right? Just click of a finger, mom and dad, boom, baby, right? Are you just going to take care of him just once, twice, 3 times, twice a week? No, right? You're going to take care of him forever until he dies. I mean, if we're still alive, right? But that's the thing. This is an ongoing process. All of this, well, except for the grief work or original work, you just have to do them like periodically. But how you do these like daily parenting, these like potency, permission, protection, the 3 P's, including the 4th one, which is practice, is basically the only way for you to get where you want to be and overcome the problems in your relationships as a burnout overachiever. Right? When you practice every single day, just like we say, practice makes perfect. But then again, you have to know what you practice. You have to know how to repair it. And if you want me to make the video on how to actually repair it and champion your inner child, then comment down below if you want that video, because seriously, I'll make videos that you guys want, right? But yeah, this is all This is all it is. If you're a burnout overachiever, then this is all your problem, especially when you're just performing in other aspects of your life. But if you have problems in quote unquote performing in your relationships, you can hardly lead, you can hardly become the man and play the role of a man and have that polarity between your partner or perhaps with your social beings or with your family as well, then all of this is the reason on why you keep on constantly arguing as a burnout overachiever. Remember, we do all this work in order for us to stay conscious and aware of ourselves, in order for us to fight the devil inside us and end and stop that generational cycle, that generational pattern that affects who we are today, because we want to be conscious and not wounded inner child again. We don't want to become a wounded child that we will pass on to our kids in the future. And we must embody the awareness and consciousness day by day, starting from today. Goodbye.